What does the opportunity look like to get involved with gaming as an industry as a whole through Web3?
I went from not tweeting at all to winning Content Creator of the Year in 8 months on Web3 Twitter. Like, that opportunity is just crazy, and it really only happens with new industries.
In today's episode of Lock In or Log Off, we're pleased to welcome an extraordinary guest. As the co-founder of Wolves DAO and the host of two popular shows, Gamified and Simplified, he's at the forefront of innovation in Web3 gaming. Together with his brother, they've achieved over 5 billion views on YouTube, showcasing their unmatched creativity and influence. His dedication to building thriving communities has earned him a passionate and loyal following. Introducing Sam Steffanina, aka Mr. Web3 Gaming is Inevitable.
What do you see as, right now, the biggest challenge to Web3 becoming inevitable?
I think it's just the friction. What you and I can appreciate is that friction is also our moat, right? That's why there's so few content creators and why we're able to create this life for ourselves, because there isn't 40 million people all competing like there is on YouTube for that same attention. I've learned to be appreciative of the friction and like the current state that we're at, because it's made all this possible.
I want to take this moment to thank the sponsor of this episode, Lizard Labs, the home of Web3 gaming. They help studios with everything they need. And with their latest launch, Project Sentience, they are now an AI-powered publisher for Web3 games. If you want to learn more, you can check out the link in the description. Welcome back to the Lock In or Log Off podcast, where I speak to builders, creators, and traders to understand how they spotted the opportunity and how they navigated their way to success. Today, we're joined by Sam Steffanina. Welcome, man.
Dude, thank you so much for having me. I was on one of your previous shows. I had a great time. Caleb has been a big inspiration for me in the space for a while, so it's a pleasure, brother. Thanks for having me.
Man, when I started this podcast, I was you were definitely one of the top of my list to speak to. I've been following your journey, and obviously it's been amazing to see your growth over the last few years. But for those that don't know Sam Steffanina at all, who were you before Web3 and who are you now?
Oh man, I was a lot of things before Web3. I worked in IT at a hospital in my early 20s. I was a chef for like 4 or 5 years. Me and my brother worked on YouTube. That's kind of what people know me for. A little bit of my history is we had the biggest dance channel in the world on YouTube for like 5 years, 2016 to 2021 kind of. And then TikTok came around, blew up, Charlie D'Amello, like all those younger people that just sort of absolutely skyrocketed to fame. And then COVID happened and we couldn't like tour as much. Our business model was kind of disrupted. And I also had an illness and stuff. And so all that stuff was like, damn, like, what am I going to do next? Because I don't feel like I just want to go back into that same thing and like grind and try to find it on a new platform. I was kind of bored. And sure enough, Web3 gaming came along into my life, and it was crazy how fast I was like, damn, like this is it, and just dedicated like 14 hours a day to grinding.
Yeah, I feel like when you go into anyone who like went into that rabbit hole at the like last bull run, like instantly just falls so deep in, and you're like, oh, this is really cool. Like I could spend more time here, and even spending like you mentioned like 14 hours a day. It's like it was like I feel like anyone who stayed here during the bear market just naturally fell in love with being in the space that amount of time in a day. It's like it's kind of a unique space in terms of the passion that you have to have for the space. But if you do, like the rewards are amazing. But yeah, I guess in terms of who Sam is now, like obviously that's how you kind of came into it all and that, but you have obviously built up a huge brand for yourself in this space. You're one of the main faces for Web3 gaming. But yeah, what is the what is the life of Sam look like now?
Man, it's unironically like exactly the life that I was hoping to be able to cultivate for myself in my 20s. Like, because I was a video game addicted, like huge diehard World of Warcraft fan. I always wanted to be a StarCraft pro gamer. I loved being able to get like every new Blizzard release and grind. I stayed up for like 4 days straight to play Diablo 3 when it came out. And I always knew that I wanted to work in gaming, and I wanted to be like a shoutcaster. I wanted to like interview cool people, and it just never really fit with like the dance stuff. And I don't know, I was having a hard time, I think, breaking into sort of like being the face of a thing. I really liked my brother being the face and me being the videographer and stuff. But for some reason, the combination of factors of, being sick and moving on from that industry and stuff just really inspired me to be like, it's time to just do something that I believe in and that I'm scared of. And that's led to all these incredible things. So now I am, a Spaces host. That's what people know me for the most. Co-founder of the Wolves DAO, which I'm super proud of. A live events coordinator, I guess, with the Wolves Dens, which is still kind of bizarre for me to say out loud. And then I also am, an advisor. I'm an ambassador for games, including, shout out to Wilder World. I just really like the hoodie, to be honest. But I love Wilder World, and it's always a challenge for me to reflect on, like, is it possible for me to do 6 things at the same time and do them well and be honest about the answer to that question? And sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is no. But it's definitely a period of like doing a bunch of things that I'm scared of, hopefully doing them well, and then finding out which ones I suck at and cultivating the things that I'm good at, or improving the things I'm bad at. I don't know. It's a challenge, but I'm a lot of things, I guess, to answer it simply.
Yeah, I feel like that's the beauty of Web3, right? There is like so many opportunities and multiple verticals. Like a lot of people are content creators, they run businesses, they trade. Like there's a lot of different verticals that you can go into, and the opportunity is limitless, especially as you grow your brand. I'm sure there's kind of more and more opportunities that have come your way. In terms of one, like, I guess, deciding what opportunities to pursue. Like you said, I think you kind of go through the iteration of trying stuff, seeing if you're good at it, and deciding if that's what you want to continue. But also too, as you've grown your brand, there's also a lot more interest in working with you, like the likes of Wilder World and everything like that. How do you navigate that world as well? Because crypto is seen as the scam is the word. Like scam has been the word that's been associated with crypto for the longest time now. And there is a lot of bad actors still in this space, and it's maturing, it's getting better. But yeah, how do you navigate the opportunities that come to you, both from like a brand perspective, but also from a work perspective on that side of things?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's something that honestly, like, most of us struggle with. We do a lot of like masterminds with creators, and that's always one of the things that comes up is, can I say no to these? If we're tiering the different sponsors, there's like the S tier at the top, and like the A tier is definitely still okay. The B tier is like usually okay, and then like C and D tier and F tier is where it really gets rough, and you have to very carefully consider what you're doing. The way that I navigate it is asking myself, like, one, do I genuinely believe in the team? Do I think that they're non-malicious? Do I think they're building a real product? Do I believe that there is like product market fit for them if they execute everything correctly? Maybe not today, but over the next couple of years, is it possible for them to find it? B, obviously, does it fit with my brand, and can I play the game over and over and over again and not want to die? Because whenever we're making videos and stuff, if you're not genuinely enjoying yourself, it's so obvious. Yeah. And I don't want to be that guy that's just seen as taking a paycheck. But then I think the last part might surprise people, which is like being willing to give yourself some forgiveness if you're wrong. Like if it's just like making an investment, right? If you do all the analysis and place your bet, like even the best investors, the best sports gamblers, the best whatever are still wrong like 47% of the time. They're just right 53. And so I think, we should hold ourselves to a high standard with the sponsorships that we take. But realistically, like I look back and there's a few that I'm like, probably in hindsight, like I wouldn't take that. Maybe I shouldn't have even at the time. But, I say this a lot, like 90+% of games in Web2 fail to make back the money that it costs to develop them. And so for us to hold Web3 games to any higher standard is crazy, because people are dealing with legal costs and tumultuous markets, and FTX blows up and half your runway disappears and stuff. Like it's going to be like 98% of them fail. And that's heartbreaking, but it's the reality. And so, be a little bit kinder to them, and also be a little bit kinder to yourself, I think, is the approach that I try to take, and I hope others do too.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice approach, especially with where, like you say, where the space is at, and it is still so early that, there's not that many products out there that you can be like, that's a hit product. Yeah, I want to be associated with that. You're very much betting on teams and their visions and kind of your judgment that you can make off your interactions with them. And I think that's why, both as a creator, but also anyone who works in the industry, it's really important how you hold yourself and the reputation you have, because these kind of feed into a lot of decisions. But you mentioned that. So gaming was something you always wanted to get into. And I think a lot of people, gaming's only getting bigger. A lot of people are even more passionate about gaming. Like a lot of kids that grow up now want to be streamers. Like that's their main goal. For people who are maybe in like the traditional world and want to get in gaming, they're struggling there. What does the opportunity look like to get involved with gaming as an industry as a whole through Web3?
Dude, I think Web3 is like, I call it the great reset, because we were super early on YouTube. We were super early to the dance niche on YouTube, and we kind of got to create and build the entire niche up. And anytime anybody brought new people to the space, that helped us grow. That's definitely not true if you start posting YouTube videos on Minecraft or StarCraft or World of Warcraft or whatever. I don't know why I just said 3 craft-related games, but it's really, really hard, and it's so diluted now. Like, it's sometimes a full-time job for 4 or 5 years to be able to break through. But I went from not tweeting at all to winning Content Creator of the Year in 8 months on Web3 Twitter. Like, that opportunity is just crazy, and it really only happens with new industries. And that was part of why I was like, damn, like, this is my opportunity to break into gaming, because so many people that are successful in Web2 don't want to come over here. But shout out to Ali Straza, who's not one of those people. She's like, I see the future, like, I'm going to position myself despite having a huge Web2 audience. So love her for that. But this is the opportunity, right? This is where everybody else is saying no. If you're brave enough to say yes, or you can see something that they don't see, that is the moat for you. And it's disappearing every day, because we're seeing that line between Web 2 and Web 3 slowly fade away, which is exciting, but it also means that, like, you have to act quickly. So I hope if somebody out there is like, man, I've always wanted to get in gaming, but I don't know, I don't have the time, whatever, like, make the time right now, because who knows, like, when is there going to be another big disruption in gaming that you can set yourself ahead in? You know, maybe the next one that I see, if I had to guess, would be like if Lens or what's the other social media platform, Farcaster, one of those, if one of those blows up, then maybe there'll be another reset where people can make interesting gaming content on there, and maybe they get an advantage. But otherwise, it's such a huge sacrifice to break through. And so you got to take these opportunities while they're hot. And yeah, I can't believe in 2 years how I went from being literally nobody to being somebody that gets to say no to a lot of offers and gets to play video games on stream for a living and stuff. You could play it over again in my head 100 times, and I'd be like, no way, dude. You know?
Yeah, I think honestly that is this is why I started the podcast, is really to show people like the opportunity in Web3, not just from the financial side, but also, like, obviously it ties into the financial side of, like, being able to work for it, but like also just the opportunity from the content side, from the working side, from the remote working, being able to travel around the world, and like there's just so many opportunities that Web3 like kind of offers because it's so new. Yeah. And I think it is that whole thing, like you say, like kind of leaning in when everyone else leans out. And I think it happens with a lot of technologies when like they come to market, everyone kind of leans out because it's like it's change, and people don't like change, so they kind of lean out. But the opportunity to lean in and find the like kind of to change your life, like you say, through gaming and everything like that is very rare. And that's why I went all in on Web3. It's like I was like, this is the moment. Like I read a book called The Outliers, and it's like all about like timing, and like it's just like all the people that made the biggest like Facebook, Google, everything like that were all born within like a 5-year gap. And it's like I'm just lucky enough to be at this stage of my life exposed to this technology and this industry. Why not? Like, yeah, I just saw the opportunity and I was like, let me go all in on it. And I think anyone who wants to get into gaming, but it's not just gaming, I think it's like, I really think it's pretty much most industries can interact with Web3 in some way. And finding that passion and finding that intersection might be able to find a way for you to basically work and do your passion every day. And I think that is the beauty of it. A lot of people I speak to on the show are able to say that like what they do every day is what they love. And I think like that is just so insane. I think it's a huge privilege, and a lot of people don't see that. So yeah, I think it's just for anyone who wants to, should definitely look to pursue it, or at least try it. You have to have an interest in it, but I think for gaming specifically, like you say, like these next 6 months to a year, it could really be life-changing.
It's such a good point, man. There's people who love fashion. They got to do, Nike, bad timing with Artifact, but those people got to enter fashion and make a ton of money in a way that they didn't have to go the traditional route. People who love music, there's like music NFTs doing really cool stuff. It's such a great opportunity for people who are passionate that just couldn't break into it in Web2 to have the opportunity to do it here if they're willing to adopt the cutting edge version of that thing. And I think that really resonated, because whenever Matt was trying to get into dance, he was a 24-year-old choreographer who had only been dancing for 3 years, who grew up in the middle of Virginia. Like, when he went to LA, people were like, who the is this dude? Like, what are you doing here? But then he started getting numbers on YouTube and he became like undeniable to the industry. And that's what I think we're all going to do, right? Not all of us, not wag me, whatever, but like a lot of us are going to make such an impact in Web3 that whenever Web2 comes along, they're going to be like, okay, this cohort of people is legitimate and they did really cool things. Like, the gates are now open for them whenever they wouldn't have otherwise been.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think because the industry is so early, like I personally believe like the barrier to be successful in Web3 is much lower than we see elsewhere. It's going to increase as the competition increases and like as Web2 creators come in and like it becomes a lot more competitive. But right now, like if you come in and you really want it, you can win in a short time span. And I think there's just so much beauty in that for anyone who's interested in pursuing gaming and content and everything on that front. But on a slightly different topic, going away from Web3 and a little bit more about Sam himself. You mentioned there that like before and when you kind of transitioned to Web3, you were ill before, when you were deciding to come into Web3. Something I am a true believer on is everyone who ends up being super successful has gone through some sort of hardship in their life. And I think it gives you that kind of grit to kind of, in the hard times of making content will probably not look that hard compared to some other times in your life. Are you able to give a bit of insight of what that period was like in your life and I guess how that shaped who Sam is today?
Yeah, thanks, man. That's a really thoughtful question. It shapes me in a lot of ways, honestly. I wish that I could like go back and just sort of like sit the version of me that was like 26 before I went through all that, sit him down and ask him questions and be able to compare and contrast the answers, because I think it would be incredibly interesting. It's sometimes hard to tell, like the lines get blurred in your head of sort of how you used to be and how you are now. But I mean, I was pretty unmotivated, mostly because I was so afraid of failing. Like when I reflect on, I wouldn't have said that at the time, but now in hindsight, it was like such an intense fear of failure that I just never really tried anything that I could be publicly failing at. And so I just wanted everybody else to take the risk and then I would sort of tack onto it. And I think after going through everything that I went through, which was basically like the abridged version is my arms shut down, so I couldn't text, I couldn't play video games, and then my legs shut down eventually, so I couldn't walk. I would go to the bathroom 3 times a day, and people would bring me every meal to my bed where I would just sit there and eat. And then I would have to switch back and forth which arm I was eating with, because I would like scoop 3 times with my right arm and it would hurt so bad that I'd have to scoop with the left arm, but I could still feed myself. Like that was a thing that I was like, I'm not making somebody else put food in my mouth. That's crazy. And I really like we didn't know what it was, which was arguably the most difficult part of the entire thing, because I didn't know, like, was I dying? Was I going to get better? Was I going to be like in a wheelchair soon? Like how is this going to progress? And it's just crazy. Like when you go through that and then you come out on the other side, like there was this feeling inside of me and I didn't know how it was going to manifest, but I was like, there's no way I could go through that and then go back to the person that I was. I couldn't do the things I did before. I see life the same way. I couldn't like treat the people in my family, my fiance, like we had all been through so much that I was just like, there's more here. And I don't care if I fall on my face 1,000,000 times. It'll never be as painful as like not being able to contribute. Like to live in a household for 3 years and provide zero value to anybody around me, except for like maybe I read a lot of psychology books. So I'd just like give people weird psychology like quips that they'd be like, oh, that's weird. I never heard of that. Like that was the extent of the value I could provide. No money, no, I couldn't fix a thing. I couldn't paint a wall. I couldn't go to the mailbox. Like I did nothing. And I was like, man, whatever I do, I just have to like be in a position where I can give back to these people. And it's just incredible how freeing that is. And one of the things that really stuck with me was somebody told me everybody that goes through something like that eventually sees it as the best thing that ever happened to them if they're able to get through it and whatever. And I can say now I am finally at the point where I can say like it is the best thing that ever happened to me. And I still get like chills every time I think about that, because there was a lot of time where I was just like so resentful. How could this happen to me? What the, you know? And to be on the other end it's really surreal. Like it still feels like a dream sometimes, where I'm like, I'm in Miami getting in a podcast with my boy, and like we're gonna go to the Heat game tonight. It's just crazy, bro.
Yeah, I mean, first, congrats on like kind of navigating that part of your life. I think moments in those lives can make or break a lot of people, and you can really, obviously, you've taken it and you've made it a superpower in many ways. And yeah, I think going through something like that, I can't even imagine how tough that must have been in that period. But if anything, it makes so much sense why Sam is who he is now, and why I think you'll only go on to do greater things. Because I think I'm a big believer. I love psychology books as well. I'm a big believer in perspective. And just when you're describing that, it kind of put I guess, a picture in my mind of like, kind of the Sam that came out on the other side is kind of like, now it's like, well, it's all or nothing. Like, why not just full send everything? And like you are like, you now have like, yeah, a new life, and you can kind of just go all in, and all the small worries you had before. I think a big one being, like you said, your fear of failure, or like fear of the perception of failure from others. And I think that's what a lot of people struggle with. I struggled with it a lot myself. When I launched this podcast, it was a part of the process that I went through. But I think it sounds like going through that whole thing kind of gave you that thing of like, well, life's very, very short in many ways, and that you can kind of go through that thing of like, let me just enjoy it. And now you're living your dream life off the back of it, which I think is amazing. But from all of that, what perspective change do you think has impacted the most on your life from a success perspective?
Oh man, that's a heavy one. Yeah, the perspective change that I think really pushed everything was this concept of like, only you can give yourself permission to do things, and also to like feel things. And there's a book by Viktor Frankl called like Man's Search for Meaning. It's about him being in the Holocaust. Is, I can tell you've read it. And somehow through that horrid experience, he managed to like psychologically put himself in a position where he was sort of content and sometimes even happy, but mostly just able to suffer these things that other people couldn't handle. And they ended up, for many reasons, meeting an ultimate demise, which is awful. But that, among other books that I've read, have really led me to realize that like, only I can give myself permission to like not fear failure and just go do the thing. A bunch of people can be like, oh, you can do it. But like, if you don't feel it, you're just never going to do it. And that's also true for happiness, right? Like enjoying something versus being like the mindset shift of I have to do this versus I get to do this. It's really easy for me sometimes, even now after all this, to still get stuck in like, oh man, I got to do that show today. Oh, I got to fly to Miami. Oh, I'm tired. I got to get up to go do this thing. But if you just frame it of like, man, I get to go hang out with my friend, do a podcast. I get to go to Miami where the weather is great. I get to go. It's just like incredible how much that just changes everything. Like it sounds so simple, but I swear, like if you just give yourself permission just for like 20 minutes to just do that, I think people are always shocked at like what a transformation it is. And if you can do it for 20 days, like everything changes. If you can do it for 20 years, like congratulations, you've won life, you know?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think reframing the way you see things can change everything in your life. It's probably been one of the most impactful things that like I've learned over the last few years is just perspective and reframing, like understanding that like, okay, like you say, like, oh, this is actually can be seen as a good thing. And I think as you start to train your mind in that way, it's the same way as like you train your body. Like the next time you interact, like you get to that situation, you'll perceive it in a more optimistic way. And I think that's how you can kind of like, train yourself to be a happier person. And I do think happiness can be learned in the same way as like health. Like you can learn to be a happy person, even like through tough times and everything like that. There's ways that you can work through it with reframing and everything like that. But in terms of if you were to speak to someone that maybe is not outside of or not gotten through the tough times yet, maybe they're in the middle of it, what is one piece of advice you'd give them to help them kind of persevere, that things will get better?
Yeah, whenever I was really sick, before I was really sick, when I think back to that time, I actually was more stressed out than I am now. Even though if you compare my schedules, I had like 4% of the responsibility that I do now. And I think that really speaks again to like how much your mindset can convince you, oh, I'm really busy. Oh, nobody understands. Oh, like whatever. Just accept that life is stressful and accept that things are hard and give yourself permission to do those things without hitting rock bottom. And arguably, I think that's harder than doing it after you hit rock bottom, which you alluded to. I wasn't able to do it. I think some people are. It's just a matter of realizing that like what you're going through is not unique. And even if you feel like, oh, I need permission from somebody else to get past this, or I don't deserve to feel stressed out because my life isn't that hard. And they're like, all of those negative thought patterns are the same thing. Like, it doesn't matter where you're at. It's all equaling the same thing, which is like depriving you of your potential. And that is like the single biggest thing to just get over. So whether it's reading books, whether it's going and doing like a mission trip or something hard, whether it's going and like deciding you're going to backpack through India, like you can force yourself to do things that are so hard that it can kind of trigger that rock bottom, I think, without actually going through it. Sometimes it's perspective of seeing really poor people and how they struggle through things, or having a family member almost die or something. Just figure it out, because there's nothing else in your life that'll have an impact that's that long lasting. Like from 30, whenever I started getting healthy again, till hopefully I die at like 110 or whatever, like shout out to technology. I'll be forever changed because of that. Like, it's the best investment you can make, even better than Bitcoin, baby.
And that is a good investment.
That's a good one, yeah.
That is a very short investment. But yeah, I totally agree. I think getting that perspective at some point, like I think, like I said, it ties back to the whole thing of like someone who's had some sort of hardship in their life kind of sees that a little bit easier. But like you say, you can get that perspective from just putting yourself in really tough situations. Yeah. In terms of, I guess, a practical tip of something someone can do to help them, like what have you found? Like obviously you said like you've read a lot of books and they've helped you with a lot of the perspective side of things. Is that the most impactful thing, or is there other things in your life that you've done that you found has really helped you alongside this?
Yeah, positive thinking, but not the way that people perceive it. If you can just sit down for like 10 minutes and give yourself permission to feel gratitude, to feel happy, to feel relaxed, like any of the positive emotions, I don't think people realize how much they're just walking through the day and like tense and like stressed out about the next thing. And I only know this because I'm a chronic overthinker and I still struggle with this literally every single day. And sometimes the only 5 minutes of my day that I'm not feeling that way is like when I finally lay down and I'm like, oh my God, like, oh, like relax. If you can do that, I think that is the single thing that makes people realize like, oh my God, like I didn't know how much I was doing this to myself until I let myself out of it for just a little bit. So I think if you had to do one thing, I would just sit down and be like, I give myself permission to like actually feel grateful for my wife, my kid, my dog, my house, my food, like anything. You know, look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs and just go to the bottom and be like food, shelter, water, family. You know, if you can just be grateful for that, like it'll literally change your life. I'm so sure about it, no matter who you are, you know?
Yeah, I think that's an incredible piece of advice. I think, like you say, it's taking that time to just pause. I think a lot of the time, I think stress is such an interesting concept, and like it's very dangerous. I think, I mean, it leads to, it's basically the cause of a lot of deaths, because it leads to a lot of the health issues that a lot of people have. Is like the core cause of it is stress. And I think finding ways from an individual perspective, everyone's different, to manage that stress is really important. Whether it is taking that time to kind of reflect and be kind of grateful, or whether it's going and doing gym and sports and helps to get that like stress relief. I think it's really important to manage it, especially as just for anyone who wants to be successful. You're gonna get a more stressful life. It kind of goes hand in hand in some ways. So like learning how to manage that, I think I think that side of things is really, really important. But in terms of who's kind of inspired you kind of through the many years, whether it's people close to you or whether it's someone who's written a good book that you've enjoyed? Who's inspired you to really go on to do the success that you've done?
Right now, I'm super inspired by Paul Bettner and by Koji Nagata from Parallel, because I see two people who have had enough success that they could just be like, I'm done. And somehow they still are taking on stuff that's even harder than what I'm doing. For whatever reason, like I won't claim to know what their motivation is, but whenever you see people, a lot of people hate Elon. I'm kind of in the middle somewhere, but like, no matter how you feel about him, to be so successful and to be like, nope, I'm going to risk it all. I'm going to be publicly humiliated. I'm going to be attacked just so I can do this next thing I really believe in. Like, that's what really inspires me, especially as somebody who, like, in my 20s, I struggled a lot with just kind of being like apathetic, being like, nothing really like is calling me, and nothing is important enough for me to dedicate my life or whatever. To find somebody who's like chronically like inspired to do another thing, no matter what safety net they already have in life, is just like wildly inspirational to me. Maybe the last example I'll give is athletes. LeBron James, 20 years in the league, still like cryo chambering his body, eating super healthy, goes to sleep at 10 p.m. But then in the off season, you see him like having fun, and like he has found a way to balance it so that he can be both sides of humanity, where he's like incredibly driven, but also gives himself the freedom to relax. And like, I just don't, I can't imagine, like, can you imagine 20 years from now, we're still like working 20-hour days and trading, and like, I don't know, like I can't imagine it, but I hope that over the course of the next 18 years, I just find myself like, wow, I did it. Like I found that part of me that's like able to do that at a high level.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think in my eyes, those sort of things kind of tie back to passion, and like it's kind of something that's like within. Like LeBron probably doesn't choose that. It's just something that's installed in him, that he's obsessed with the game. Like his mind probably doesn't switch off on that front. Similar to all the people you mentioned, Elon Musk, Paul Bettner, everyone. I think there's probably an element of like their brain just doesn't let them. Like they just like they're wired that way. I think there's a level of like wiring that way. But that's why I'm a huge advocate for like people finding their purpose. And I think it's a really hard thing. And I think it's a struggle for a lot of younger people in this day and age. It's like finding purpose and what you love, because that is when you start to see the best version of yourself, is when you're doing something that you love, and because then you will go that extra mile and you will grow as a person, where it's very easy to kind of sit comfortable and not kind of, when you don't have that purpose, you kind of do fall into like the rhythm of comfort. In terms of finding purpose, do you have any advice on that? I think it's a very complex topic. But for you, how did you, obviously you love gaming and you kind of managed to find this, but do you have any tips for someone trying to find purpose?
Man, I still don't even know that I've found mine, to be honest, but it's probably the single biggest like struggle of my mental life has been like trying to find something that I feel is meaningful. Like, even in gaming, like I love it, but do I feel like I'm changing the world in a positive way? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I think being in Web3 and having this monster of like you said, people still see it as scammy, and working to change that reputation and being a positive catalyst in it does give me a sense of purpose. Like it makes me feel like I'm making a meaningful contribution, not just to me, but to the people I care about, like you and the Wolves DAO and Koji and Paul. Like they see what I'm doing and they feel like it's positive, and that makes me be like, oh, like maybe it really is. I think I wonder actually, like in the 90s, you know how whenever like Call of Duty came out, people were like, oh, it's killing the kids, like they're gonna have like anger issues, they're gonna like, I wonder if they felt the same way of like, no, guys, they're just having fun. Like, I'm going to prove to you that they're just having fun. And they like ran studies and stuff to like prove. I wonder if it's similar to that. To answer your question more specifically, like how to find it, I think, there's two types of people in the world. There's people who say, I'm going to work regardless of how I feel about that work. and then I'm going to try to do stuff that I find fun outside of work. And then there's other people that are like, I'm so obsessed with this thing that if I'm not able to dedicate like 12, 14, whatever hours a day to it, I'm going to go crazy. Yeah. And if you're that latter person, you just have to keep trying things. Like especially if you're able to get a skill that is easily transferable between a lot of different industries, that's really like the magic. Like content, I was so lucky because I was in dance, which I didn't care about. I don't even really like dancing. Like I'll have fun at the club or whatever, but like I'm not about to bust out like an 8 count of choreography anytime soon, even though I was in the room with the best dancers in the world for 8 consecutive years. But turns out that like being able to do videography, being able to host, being able to come up with interesting questions, studying analytics, doing lighting, like all of those things are applicable to sports, art, fashion, engineering. It's like everything uses content now. So that one skill has given me an access point to do all of the things that I ever find interesting in life. And I think there's a lot of skills that fit into that. So if I was starting again from zero and didn't have any talent anywhere, and I just knew like I wanted to work towards something I was passionate in, I would find something like that where it was like, one day this will be applicable enough for me to transfer it into that industry that I care about when I see that opportunity. And there's no instant gratification in it, but it's as close as you can get to like meaningfully working towards like a goal that's too big for you to just be like, I'm going to work in gaming and like applying to jobs where you're not qualified, like that feels shitty.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice. I've never really thought of that specifically, but I think it's very true. I think that's kind of how I was able to get into Web3 as well. I had marketing skills in Web2, and I was able to transfer them with a mixture of also understanding the nuances of Web3. But yeah, it was the transferable skills that allowed me to go into Web3. And yeah, I think continue to reflect on when I first decided to make that move, what I wanted my life to look like, and it played out to be as good as I would have ever hoped, and I hope it continues to go that route. But it is such I think I feel like a lot of people that have taken that risk, not all, but a lot of people have managed to make it work, and experience a life that maybe they'd wished for before. So yeah, I think that is why I wanted to kind of paint that picture to a lot of people that's why, that sit outside of Web3, just understanding that it can be a catalyst and a superpower to kind of help them live the life that they might love and enjoy in whatever industry that might look like. But going back a little bit more to the Web3 side of things, Web3 gaming is inevitable. The number one catchphrase I see all over the timeline, and it is. I think we both, if it fits in that pool of Web3 gaming is inevitable. But I think there's a lot of, I guess, context that comes alongside that. So what does it mean to you? What does Web3 gaming is inevitable mean to Sam?
Yeah, I think at the Games Awards, I'm pretty sure I apologized during one of the speeches for coming up with that, because I know it can be annoying, especially with me saying it every day and then other people echoing it. But I wrote a thread. There was a period like 4 or 5 months ago where like Jonah and some other people were like, Web3 gaming is like in a really bad place. Like it's dying. You guys like to just say positive shit or like killing it. Like you need to. And so I sat down. I was like, I wanted to just like tweet, so fast, but I was like, no, I'm gonna sit on this. And I sat down like 2 days later, and I wrote a thread that if you look up my Twitter account, you'll find eventually if you scroll. And I explained like why I truly believe this, because so often it's left without context and people are like, oh, he's just being like positive, he's just shilling, he just whatever. And I don't blame people for thinking that if they haven't like heard me explain it. But you mentioned it already, right? Where there's like, Web3 is changing the financial industry, changed the fashion industry. It's changing the government in America, like Avalanche getting the California DMV to put car titles on the blockchain is literally something that I had a car title issue in my early 20s where I had somebody driving around on my car title, getting tickets sent to me. And then by the time they were sent to me, they were late. And so it was like a $700 ticket just like would randomly show up in the mail. And I couldn't change it. I called the police. I went to the DMV like 7 times. So like these issues that I've dealt with in my own life are being changed because of blockchain. Medical records being on the blockchain. The science is now on the blockchain. There's so many things. And so Web3 is inevitable, period. Like, that's undeniable. Some people think you can debate Web3 gaming, but if you just look at all the different things it changes, data, monetization methods, privacy, you cannot be in this space and look at me in the eyes and tell me that at least one of those does not get integrated into gaming regularly in the next decade or two. We can argue about the timeline. We could say, oh, in 2 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever. You cannot put the genie back in the bottle. And I've talked to so many incredible founders in this space. And I said, is there a chance that one day we just say, you know what? It's not worth it. The gas and the chains and the wallets and it's not worth it. And every single one of them says, no, we'll get past all that. It'll just be easy one day. Trust me, like, it'll happen, because they know that the benefits are undeniable. And like, technology sucks when it's new. Like, even the Apple Vision Pro, like, you know, Zuckerberg investing $10 billion a year in metaverse, whatever, goggles stuff. Like, it just sucks at the beginning. The first phone I used was like trash, but like 20 years later, like, it's not, you know? And so I think that's what I mean when it's inevitable, is just like, guys, like, zoom out, you know, like, let's take a breath, please.
Yeah, I think it's like, it's not knowing exactly how it is inevitable, but that it is inevitable. I think a lot of people have their own theses on what that will look like. I think we won't know what it looks like until it comes to like fruition. But also, like, a lot of what people don't realize is a lot of these founders that believe in the technology have come from other technological kind of advancements, like whether it was like mobile gaming or whether it was free to play, or like different kind of expertise in like similar situations where they had a lot of teething issues and it was really tough and they saw it come to life. So I think it comes from their experience, knowing that like this is just normal with new technology, and understanding how trash can be initially. But in terms of like, what do you see as right now the biggest challenge to Web3 becoming inevitable? Like, we say, obviously we don't know what it looks like, but yeah, what do you see as the biggest challenge currently to making that statement true?
I think it's just the friction. And what you and I can appreciate is that friction is also our moat, right? That's why there's so few content creators and why we're able to create this life for ourselves, because there isn't 40 million people all competing like there is on YouTube for that same attention. And so I've learned to be appreciative of the friction and like the current state that we're at, because it's made all this possible. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's always going to stop the majority of people from getting in. And so I think until we get to that point, we're gonna suffer a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's probably just because we spend so much time in this space and we've seen the developments, but like, it feels like it's getting closer. Like, it feels like the stuff is getting solved from like a technological perspective, and then obviously from the gaming perspective, we need the stronger games, but it feels like that's getting solved as well. It feels like it's beautiful to be a part of this kind of, this new industry in a way, and seeing the progression it's making. I feel like we're all kind of cheering its successes, but we still do have a long way to go. But like you say, it's our moat, so it gives us our advantage for everything we want to do. And when it does become inevitable, I'm sure you'll be the face that is planted next to it being inevitable. I think it's super exciting. But in terms of, I guess within Web3 gaming, what are the projects and developments, maybe not just projects, but developments in the industry that you're most excited about that is making Web3 gaming inevitable?
Well, you know, I come from like World of Warcraft, like I said, like diehard addicted to World of Warcraft. And so often whenever you hear people have that onboarding experience of like, it's always the auction house. They're always like, I used to game things, I used to trade stuff, whatever, but then wanted to sell my account, so I had to sell it on the black market and do all that stuff. And I think one of the more exciting things is Market Wars from it's not from Game 7, but it's like one of their subsidiaries or whatever, or maybe they invested in it. Them doing literally a World of Warcraft private server so that people can enable the Web3 version of this is super interesting, because it's just like a perfect parallel. Like, there is nothing else stopping you. It's just World of Warcraft with Web3. So let's see how that goes. I think that's really fun. Parallel, I think, has been leading the space for a long time as far as like trading, really interesting experience, great gameplay. And their pack opening experience this time around was Web3 and also just like really, really good. And it was one of those moments where I was like, damn, okay, like somebody's doing it now, you know? I think Wildcard and what they're doing with thousands, how they're trying to use Web3 to sort of break the stranglehold that like Twitch has on streaming, and to help streamers get a larger share of the revenue of the pie that they bring to games, I think is beautiful and like super mission driven. Like I would only expect the Betners to do. When I look around, I'm more inspired than I am, you know, disincentivized, or there's a word that I'm missing. Like I feel really inspired by what people are doing. Unfortunately, I don't see a lot of examples where I'm like, wow, they did it. Like that's what we're going to do for the next 10 years. It's still very experimental. And sometimes that's tough because things you thought were going to work don't work, or people, you know, get upset about it. Then you have to kind of go through this period of unwinding from that. But overall, like I'm super bullish on a lot of the people. I mean, AI Arena will be the last one that I mentioned. Holy crap. Like what they're doing with bots being on chain, but they're highly skilled, but it helps player liquidity. And then like they're even doing it in like Mahjong. Like our moms are going to be playing against like AI sophisticated bots that are perfectly like the same skill level as them. Stuff like that is just like, wow, like we're actually here, you know, it's happening finally. It's not just like a white paper. Like this is real now. That sort of stuff is so exciting to be.
Yeah, I think all the ones that you mentioned are really pioneering in the space, and I'm similarly very excited for it. But as we kind of look to wrap up, what is one piece of advice you'd give someone that wants to get into Web3 gaming specifically?
Dude, I mean, Twitter is still the gateway. If you have like TikTok short form chops or whatever, like it's great. You know, whenever you get to the point of being able to take deals and stuff, it's always great to have multi-platform. So don't let, you know, being bigger on another platform stop you from growing on Twitter. But so much of the business development and the actual contract accrual, the top of funnel of people reaching out to you and stuff happens on Twitter. So whether you like it or not, you just have to go that route. But it's crazy, man. I mean, people with 2,000 to 5,000 followers on Twitter still make more money than a lot of streamers and stuff that I know with 30,000 people that follow them on Twitch, or, you know, 500,000 YouTube followers or whatever, because again, like Web2 is just so saturated. And so I would just say, like, don't let it stop you. Like one good post and you can go from 0 to 5,000 on Twitter. It's hard, but if you do it, like you're already there. And so just start. And the last thing I always tell people is look for the content that you want but can't find. Yeah. If you can pinpoint that, which is what I did with Gamified, that was what really solidified this like ideology in my head. If you're looking for a show and you can't find it on the internet, then that means you probably should just make it. Or you should be part of the team that makes it. You know, maybe you're not the host or whatever, but you're the guy who programs it, or you help with the deals, or I don't know, whatever. But trust me, like other people are looking too, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think it was Sammy that previously mentioned it. And he was like, what made him start doing his content was like he would be looking for stuff, couldn't find it. Yep. So then he decided to just create the source for everyone else to kind of find it a lot easier. Yeah. And it is like, that is one of the best ways to fast track kind of growth and kind of providing value. Like everything, like when it comes to content creation, is providing value in some form. And I think that's a great way on Twitter specifically. And then within Web3, everyone's kind of looking for resources to make their lives easier because everyone's lazy, as we all are. But I think that's a great tip. But anyone who wants to follow you to continue on your journey and see the amazing heights that you'll reach, where's the best place to find it?
I mean, Twitter's the place. Sam Steffanina. Honestly, I don't really post anywhere else at this point. 2025, that's going to change a little bit. I want to get more into live streaming and being able to do more things, especially this winter. I'm really excited to just like sit in my cave and like make a bunch of cool stuff. But yeah, find me on Twitter, slide in the DMs. You know, I'm always happy to answer people that have questions about content creation or how to handle the business side of Web3. I think I've signed a few deals that have made creators reach out to me and be like, oh, how the hell do you structure that? Because like I don't know how to, like, just hit me up. You know, we'll figure it out. Yeah,
I think that's definitely a unique side of Web3 is the business side of content. But maybe that is one for the next podcast that we have you on and go into.
Thanks,
but yeah, thank you very much for coming on. Incredibly insightful. It all makes sense as to why you've had so much success and why you will continue to have so much success. But yeah, thank you very much for coming on, Sam.
I appreciate you, bro. Thanks so much. Great job.
Thank you.